This mech might join my Stalker 5S in being sold off. I'm usually a really big fan of any Marauder chassis variant, but this particular one just doesn't perform all that well. I like it because it has ECM, and it's an 85-ton assault mech, so I can bring a lot of firepower, or try to bring a lot of firepower, and still have some good group utility with that ECM. The problem is the hard points on this thing really do cripple it. So I've tried to come up with a setup here that that makes the best use of the hard points that I can, and the ECM as well. It's a little bit of a sniper build, but it can still do well up close. The Gauss rifles and the extended range large lasers can hit pretty far, and then the SRM6s can provide some extra damage up front or in close combat. But there's nothing here like a PPC or whatever that's rendered ineffective in close range, so I can still hit with every weapon in close. The weapons are mostly arm mounted, which is a bit of a mixed bag in this case, because the arms are so low slung that a lot of the times you're going to wind up just shooting the ground because there's a hill or something in the way. The chassis was based on a design from an anime, so that's one thing that I've found in playing this game, is that so many of these mechs were just designed to look cool, and they weren't really all that practical in real life. There's been plenty of discussions about whether mechs in general are a viable weapon, and I personally don't think they really would be. But when you just make something to look cool, and then you play a game like this where you take it into the battlefield and you discover all the glaring flaws in that cool looking design, it does kind of take the wind out of your sails, or it's just not so cool anymore. But we've got some sniping going on already. I'm trying to find a good target without exposing too much. I can always shoot with my 2 large lasers, because those are fairly high mounted. One is in the torso, and then one is actually located in the head compartment. I'm being a little too timid here, so I don't really see anyone just yet. There's that dervish out there, but I can't really bring my other weapons to bear on him. Now I finally line up some good shots. The problem is, again, with those arm weapons being so low slung, I really have to expose a lot in order to actually shoot the target. Unlike say the Hellbringer, where I can poke up a little bit and shoot them, or even the Marauder variant 2CA, which has torso mounted autocannons. Even with that one, I can just poke over a little bit, shoot them, and then step back. It's inevitable that you're going to take damage in this game, but there's no reason to just stand in front of your target, unless you're actually firing. So almost every mech is going to want to pull back at some point, unless it's just entirely too slow to do so. And one other problem with exposing so much is that generally somebody is going to have PPCs on the opposite team, which means that they're going to be able to negate your ECM for a while. So then you're going to start taking LRM fire, or just being noticed more by the enemy team. At this point, we've got some enemy mechs to our flank, so I'm trying to get away from them. I was torso twisting as I ran, and now I'm trying to use this pillar as cover.
Corsair sent a torso, Bravo.
Thankfully, my team is providing a lot of suppressing fire, so I was able to get away with virtually no damage.
Good job on that, Dara.
Highlander by himself. Golf 6.
Here I wasn't really sure where to go. I could have NASCAR'd around, but there's a lot of my team here on the left, which is great. I generally like when the team decides to hold their position. The only thing was I wasn't so sure about really taking this position. since there was, only I think like maybe 2 or 3 medium-sized mechs over there, or lights. So I didn't know if it was enough of an enemy presence to really warrant us all pointing this direction instead of where the majority of the team was. Anyway, I mean, we'll take out most of what's over there. It'll cost us this Atlas, who decided for whatever reason to just wander over there. If you're in a slow-moving mech like an Atlas, don't do that. I mean, the Atlas is a fantastic wall and can generally provide a lot of firepower, but, if you have enemies that are far away, don't go chasing them, especially if they're quick targets. Try to be in the middle of battle. I mean, that guy didn't have any of us with him. He just kind of, threw his mech away. Here I led my shot just a little bit too much. Unfortunately, all this time I haven't even really been able to use my SRMs just because it's been a long-range match. But here I finally get to use them, and if I'm not mistaken, they actually get me, I think they got me that kill. It was either the lasers or the missiles, but they were handy. And now we're down to the point where we're more or less mopping up. Looks like they have a couple of LRM boats in this area. So I feel, pretty confident in taking those guys on.
New target acquired.
Here I really should have fired the Gauss rifles and the other weapons at the same time so that it was all more pinpoint damage. But since I fired the other weapons first, that actually gives them time to react to whatever else I'm doing, so they might be able to twist away or move or do anything else. So, it would be a much better punch if it was all concentrated. So here this guy tears up my left torso, and so I decide to move around the right side, but in the meantime I think they take him out. Yeah. So now we're down to just the last target. I heard someone say that they were in the 6th line, although they didn't say which direction they were moving. Most people were moving the direction behind me, but I decided to go the other way just in case, this is the way they headed. So the problems with this mech, aside from the hardpoint locations, or actually it's all down to the hardpoint locations really, but aside from what I've already kind of mentioned about the arms, with the 2 energy weapons you have one in your torso, and then as I mentioned one is in the cockpit, which means you can only fit a single slot size energy weapon in the cockpit. So you're very, very limited in what you have in that spot. So thankfully with their more advanced tech, the clans can fit a large laser there, but there's still a ton of stuff they cannot fit in a single slot. So especially if you want to be able to pair similar types of weapons together, you're incredibly limited in your options. If I wanted, like, say, a heavy large laser, which is what I really prefer to the ER large lasers, I can only fit one of those in the right torso, and then I would have to fit something that's a single slot in the cockpit compartment. So it doesn't really work out there. So a lot of builds, will kind of be stuck with, I think, either large lasers or mediums. Even then, it's got to be like a medium pulse laser or an ER medium. You can fit a tag if you're running missiles.
Target destroyed.
So, just not a fantastic mech. I will go ahead and do another setup on this, just because I really do want to give this mech a chance. I really like the fact that it has ECM, and again, I'm just a big fan of this chassis. You can see very, very mediocre performance, 491 damage, 1 kill. A lot of my matches in this do wind up as losses, and it's just because I really can't carry my weight. I don't know yet if it's me or the mech, although I really do think at this point that it's very likely just the mech and its limitations.